Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Kathy Park in for Savannah Sellers. Right now in Morning News Now, under scrutiny, pressure is mounting for a special counsel to investigate President Biden. NBC News has learned that aides to the president discovered a second set of classified documents at a location he used after serving in the Obama administration and before becoming president.
How ironic. I know Joe Biden was quick to criticize President Trump for mistakenly taking some documents that were apparently classified. He called President Trump irresponsible.
It comes just days after the initial set of documents were discovered in a private office Biden used after he was vice president. The question now, could there be more? And system failure. This morning, air traffic operations are back up and running after the FAA's technical glitch that created chaos in airports nationwide, causing thousands of flight delays and cancellations yesterday. Air travelers are still dealing with the aftermath this morning. Everything you need to know before you catch that flight. Plus, hot debate. Gas stoves at the center of a political battle in Washington. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission backtracking after considering banning the stoves over health concerns linked to indoor air pollution from the appliances. The White House is weighing in. We'll have the latest on where things stand now. And globetrotting. The New York Times just released its list of the best places to travel this year, from Alaska to Africa. All the destinations you'll want to consider for your next vacation. That sounds pretty good right about now.
Yeah, exactly. 52 options. So one of them has got to be on your list this year when it's all said and done.
All right. Good to be with you, Joe. We'll begin this morning with growing questions for President Biden and the handling of classified documents after serving in the Obama administration and before becoming president.
According to a person familiar with the matter, at least one additional batch of documents marked classified has been found. The initial discovery of documents was made public earlier this week. Those files were discovered in the Washington office Mr. Biden used after he was vice president. Those documents are now under review by the DOJ. Now, that source tells NBC News this second set of files was found in a different location and that aides have been searching for any additional classified materials that might be in other locations since November. So far, the White House has not replied to a request for comment, and the Justice Department had no comment. On Tuesday, President Biden said he was cooperating fully. For the latest, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa. Ali, good morning. So first of all, what can you tell us about this new batch of documents that were found, and what more do we know about the search for any potential additional documents?
Yeah, Joe, good morning. Well, remember, we had way more questions than answers even after that first discovery of that batch of classified documents before my colleagues at the White House, Carol Lee, Mike Memoli, and Ken Delanian at the Justice Department got this scoop yesterday that at least one more batch of classified documents had been found. And what we do know right now is that after that initial discovery, Biden's team went searching through several other properties, several other offices, looking for more documents that may exist to be able to turn them over to the National Archives, give them to the Department of Justice to review. We don't know exactly when or where these documents were discovered, but we can assume that President Biden's two homes in Delaware, as well as any other offices he used during his time after the vice presidency, before his presidency, any offices he used during that time. We also don't know the level of classification of these documents, what exactly is inside of them, and how exactly they ended up not just at the Penn Biden Center, but wherever this second batch was found. So definitely a lot of questions still to be answered at this moment.
We have been talking about documents for months now. That's because last summer, the FBI searched former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. That turned up more than 100 documents with classified markings. That search happened after the FBI learned that Trump had not fully complied with a previous subpoena. So now earlier this week, Republican Congressman James Comer sent a letter to the White House counsel's office requesting more information on what's happening now. What's the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy saying about all this?
Yeah, Joe, well, you can imagine Republicans are seeing this as sort of the gift that keeps on giving. They had already planned to launch probes into President Biden and his family members. Now this is just adding fuel to the fire. So you saw what Representative Comer sent over. Then you have Senators Hawley and Lindsey Graham calling for AG Garland to appoint a special counsel like we saw in the former President Trump's case. And then we heard the current House Speaker Kevin McCarthy speak about this yesterday. Listen to what he had to say.
Every time we find something that comes out before the election dealing with Biden's family, it's pushed under the rug. It's called a lie. It's called the Russians are doing it. And now, why did they treat President Trump totally different than DOJ? We'll get to the bottom of it, because they treat people differently based upon their philosophical political party, and that is wrong, and America dislikes that.
Republicans pointing out what they think are similarities in these cases, but the White House is pointing out differences between this case involving President Biden and former President Trump. They say that former President Trump was subpoenaed multiple times and repeatedly asked for those documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate, ignored those subpoenas, which led to the FBI searching Mar-a-Lago. And they say that President Biden, in this case, his team immediately turned the small batch of documents, at least the first discovery of documents, over as soon as they found to the DOJ as well as the National Archives.
All right, Allie, thank you so much.
Over on Capitol Hill, newly elected Republican Congressman George Santos is coming under pressure to step down from members of his own party. GOP officials from Nassau County, New York, held a press conference yesterday urging Santos, who admitted to lying about key details of his background, to resign immediately. NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us with more on this. Julie, good morning to you. So some pretty damning comments from those New York Republicans. Walk us through what they said about George Santos and why they want him to stand down.
Yeah, just more bad news piling on for George Santos, sworn in just a few days ago as a congressman officially, and he's avoiding answering questions about any of the fabrications that he has made about his resume, his jobs, his personal history, but this time angering the local officials who helped get him here. Take a listen from the local Nassau County Republican Chairman Joseph Chiron, what he had to say yesterday about Mr. Santos.
George Santos' campaign last year was a campaign of deceit, lies, and fabrication. He deceived the voters of the 3rd Congressional District. He deceived the members of the Nassau County Republican Committee, elected officials, his colleagues, candidates, his opponents, and even some of the media. He's not welcome here at Republican headquarters for meetings or at any of our events. As I said, he's disgraced the House of Representatives, and we do not consider him one of our congresspeople.
Now, some of these comments around the fact that George Santos actually submitted a resume to the county Republicans in order to get them to throw their support behind him. And his resume included embellishments about going to college, graduating at the top 1% of his class, and others that we've been hearing about over the last few weeks.
And Julie, Santos has been pretty defiant through all this. What's been his response about all of this?
Look, I was chasing him in the hallways for weeks now. For a week now, for days now. It feels like such a long time that we've been trying to get answers from Congressman Santos. And yesterday, when all of this came to light, just days and days of piling on these allegations against him, he's not letting that pressure take him anywhere. He actually issued a tweet, if we could put it up on the screen here, saying, quote, "I was elected to serve the people of New York 3, not the party and politicians. I remain committed to doing that and regret to hear that local officials refuse to work with my office to deliver results to keep our community safe and lower the cost of living. I will not resign." He's telling reporters that he will not resign in the halls yesterday as well. My colleague Kate Santalese asked him, and he replied that he would not. We also asked him earlier in the week about other allegations, including from the FEC looking into him now. And he said that he will speak to the media on his time.
All right, we'll see what happens next. Julie Sirkin, thank you.
Now to those deadly storms in California. Another round of rain is set to hit the northern part of the state as early as tonight, and officials say it could last up to a week. Tens of thousands of people near the Monterey Peninsula were told to leave their homes yesterday after authorities warned that the already swollen Salinas River is expected to overflow.
Massive mudslides and fast-moving water continue to cripple roadways, bridges, and train tracks. Take a look here where parts of the road was literally wiped away. And it's not just rain. Snow is actually slamming the mountains, with some areas have already reaching their average snow totals for the season. That's 3 months early. Let's get a closer look at what to expect from your weather forecast. Boy, folks in California, they're getting the brunt of it right now.
Yeah, definitely. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here with a look. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And yeah, it just keeps on going. We have tracked 8 storms since December 27th. We're going to track at least 3 or 4 more over the next week. And yes, we are still talking about the West. Now, California's going to get a little bit of a break today. Central and Southern California, a bit of a break before rain comes back tomorrow. It's really the western portions of Washington and Oregon where we're seeing that heavy rain falling, especially where you see those brighter colors, those yellows and oranges and reds. Those are the heaviest downpours. And we're going to see this all day long. Rain is going to return tonight in California, and then we're going to see that over the weekend as well. We have higher mountain snow once again. That's in the blue. The pink is the mixed precipitation. So we have it all. We're going to continue to see storm after storm coming onshore. Today, another storm. Good news is that break for California, but we're seeing gusty winds as well. That's adding to the trouble there because we have such saturated grounds that when we have that wind blowing up to 60 miles per hour in some spots, it's going to bring those trees down. So we're concerned about that. Here is tomorrow, that rain returning to California. That is good news. We're going to get flooding very quickly because we're so saturated, and we will continue that over the weekend. Concerned about flash flooding as well in the state of Oregon today, where you see that darker blue. That's where we're concerned mostly for that flash flooding. Rainfall amounts anywhere from up to an inch, even up to 4 inches in some spots along the coast of Washington and California. And where you see the pinks and purples, that's where we're expecting the most snow as well. That's a concern. Another concern are strong storms. You see that cold front in portions of the east. That is the storm that affected California on Monday. It has moved cross country, and now it's impacting portions of the mid-Atlantic into the southeast. And we are expecting strong storms later on this evening. So the setup is for those East Coast rain and storms. We're going to look for a severe risk later on tonight. We had some strong storms earlier today in Kentucky and also southern portions of Illinois. That was earlier this morning. But, guys, tonight we're going to see the chance for some tornadoes, strong winds up to 60 miles per hour, and even some hail.
All over the country, we're seeing stuff. All right, thanks, Michelle.
Sure. Michelle, thanks. Well, now to that technical glitch that led to chaos at the nation's airports. A critical software system used by the FAA went down, prompting a pause to departing flights, leading to thousands of delays and cancellations yesterday, and the ripple effects are still playing out today. NBC News aviation correspondent Tom Costello is at Reagan National Airport just outside Washington with all the latest. Good morning, Tom.
Kathy, good morning. So things are moving. Behind me, we've got planes watching the bags being loaded onto the planes, activity on the ramp and also on the runways. At the moment, we've got about 525 delays, 63 cancellations. That is a vast improvement over where we were yesterday with this series of cascading delays and cancellations. We now know the cause of this. This was a damaged file in a critical piece of software that the FAA relies on every day. And right now, it does not appear to be cyber-related.
At airports across the country this morning, all systems are go, even though some passengers are still struggling with the domino effects of yet another turbulent day for air travel. The FAA now says a corrupted software file led to the largest ground stop of flights since 9/11, just before we came on the air Wednesday.
We've got a major outage, breaking news coming from the FAA.
This is a big story right now.
The FAA has grounded all American flights.
That software shutdown led to a 2-hour halt on the tarmac and then 9,000 delays and nearly 3,000 cancellations through the day. The FAA says the NOTAM, or Notice to Air Missions system, went down. It relays essential safety information to pilots on everything from runway closures to construction, military, and space activities.
It provides the pilots with the most up-to-date information on things that are not normal. And airline pilots are required to have it.
As the agency worked to bring it all back online, morning travelers, especially with connections, found themselves stuck and scrambling.
We all anticipate coming to the airport and everything going smoothly, and today that didn't happen.
Government sources tell NBC News issues started developing Tuesday, prompting the FAA to reboot the system.
This is an incredibly complex system, so glitches or complications happen all the time, but we can't allow them to ever lead to this level of disruption.
Industry experts say it points to the need for upgrades to the system. Lawmakers, meanwhile, say they want more transparency.
We can't look at this as just some software glitch. This is a major problem. We can't have this again.
All of it rubbing salt in the wounds of a traveling public still recovering from a tumultuous holiday travel period. But unlike that meltdown, this time around, airlines will not be obligated to pay for hotels or meals.
We have Airbnbs booked, rental cars booked, and that's going to be a nightmare trying to get a refund.
Yeah, the bottom line is that the airlines are not responsible for those costs. By the way, a very strange coincidence yesterday. Canada's NOTAM system also went down for several hours. It appears to be completely unrelated. Canada says it does not see any connection, but just a strange coincidence on a very bad day for travel in the United States. Things are improving today, but you can expect that it's going to take still a while to work through these delays that ripple through the system. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, what a mess. All right, Tom Costello. Tom, thank you.
Coming up, new developments this morning in the killings of 4 Idaho college students. The suspect in the case set to make another court appearance today. We're going to have the very latest.
And Human Rights Watch just released its annual review on the state of human rights around the world, what they're saying about the global response to world crises like the war in Ukraine. We'll have that for you next.
The suspect accused of killing 4 students at the University of Idaho is set to make his second court appearance today.
Yeah, Brian Coburger is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and charges for burglary. And joining us now to discuss is NBC News analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, good morning to you. So I understand we're standing by for a preliminary status hearing. So what can we expect to see today?
Yeah, a status conference is not a major event in a criminal case in Idaho. It really comes after the entry of plea and before the pretrial conference. And it's exactly what it sounds like. The parties get together and they essentially say, okay, what's our plan? What's the trial date? When can the government get discovery to the defendant? Maybe there might be some pretrial type motions discussed. So that's what we can expect today. Not a lot of fireworks, but an important stepstone along the path to trial, which I expect will be quite a ways out because of the pretrial publicity in this case.
The suspect, Coburger, has not yet entered a plea. He could decide to waive his right to a speedy trial. If he does go that route, what's the impact on the case, and what does that mean for his defense moving forward?
Yeah, waiving a speedy trial is a real difficult strategic decision sometimes, because if you waive it, it'll give you that extra time to build your case. But that extra time inures to the benefit of the prosecution. So, for example, in this case, if he said, nah, I want my speedy trial rights, that means that the court has to schedule trial within a certain number of days. And this might be one of those cases because the police have been playing catch-up on their own. So they may not have all of their ducks in a row. But in all likelihood, the defense will waive speedy trial so they can have time to get their investigators, their DNA experts, all of their case ready for trial.
So today, no fireworks, but what's next after this hearing, and how realistic, when can we expect this trial to begin?
Now we begin, after today, a long and probably uneventful process, at least in court, because once discovery starts, the government has to turn over this information. That's not a court event. In other words, it just goes back and forth between the attorneys. Maybe you see the attorneys file some pretrial motions. I expect maybe, for example, a motion to change venue because of the pretrial publicity in this venue. But then there's a bit of a challenge in a case like this. Where in the world could you possibly move this defendant in Idaho for trial that the jury pool hasn't heard about this case and maybe formed an opinion? So when you have a case that is this infamous, it's always going to be difficult to find a venue where you can get a fair trial. But the courts recognize that, and they're going to put him somewhere. Whether he stays or somewhere else, trial will go forward.
Lot to watch. All right,
watch.
Danny, thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Human Rights Watch has released its latest report assessing the state of human rights around the world. The New York-based organization notes that a, quote, litany of human rights crises that unfolded in 2022 has left behind a sea of human suffering. But the report also had a hopeful message that there were new opportunities to make positive changes. For more on this, we are joined by the acting executive director of Human Rights Watch, Tarana Hassan. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, as you mentioned in your report, 2022 saw a series of crises. Of course, we have the war in Ukraine, the humanitarian situation still in Afghanistan, then you have protests in China and Iran. So what are the lessons we're learning about the last year? I mean, you say these crises are opening up new leadership opportunities, right?
That's right. I mean, it has been it's been a pretty dark year for human rights on many levels. I mean, there's a brutal war in Ukraine. We're seeing Afghanistan. The population is on the brink of starvation, as well as facing an all-out assault on women's rights. But, you know, amongst all of this, and particularly as a result of the war in Ukraine, what we saw was that we know what is possible to protect human rights when the world comes together. And we saw an unprecedented solidarity when it came to responding to Ukraine, with the world coming together to ensure the protection of civilians and accountability and justice for the horrific crimes that are being committed. The International Criminal Court has opened proceedings in relation to Ukraine. We saw the UN General Assembly speak out in condemning Russia's actions on more than one occasion. And we saw the UN Human Rights Council actually put together, get enough support to put together a evidence gathering mechanism. So, you know, when we see what is possible, when there is political will from around the world, where state parties actually and governments put their own agendas aside for a moment and actually put protection of human rights and the protection of the most vulnerable first, there's real possibility for change.
That solidarity we have seen around Ukraine, I know you want to see more of that when it comes to tackling other human rights causes. Why do you think we don't see that as often as we did in Ukraine? Where else do you think maybe we could see it?
Absolutely. I mean, this is now, the bar is set high, and that's what 22 left us with. After many years of feeling like human rights were being chipped away, the bar is high, and we intend on holding states to this same standard when it comes to addressing the very much forgotten conflict in Ethiopia, where there is now a fragile truce, but there were crimes against humanity, Human Rights Watch found, that were committed there, and there needs to be accountability, because you can't have stability without ensuring that there's accountability and justice. And, you know, it's not just around forgotten conflicts. You know, let's think about Myanmar, which captured the world's attention when the junta took over in 2021. But now we find ourselves where Myanmar is completely off the international agenda, and the junta has actually moved from crushing dissent and attacking protesters to an all-out military assault on the civilian population, which is resisting the junta and their rule. So we need to see the same type of accountability mechanisms and send the message to human rights abusers and autocratic governments that the world is watching, and that the world is going to take action.
You know, we talk a lot when we talk about human rights about other countries, but very quickly here, what's your assessment of the state of human rights here in the U.S.?
Well, I think it's very difficult to talk about the U.S. without talking about the dangerous regressions that we saw when it came to reproductive rights in the U.S. and abortion rights. And, you know, Human Rights Watch has expressed extreme concern about the changes that have taken place in a number of states. However, what we saw was that where abortion was on the ballot in the midterm elections, that people rose up. You know, people are fighting for women's reproductive rights. And where the issue was on the ballot, we actually saw that there were cases where that right was either maintained or there was actually progress made. So, you know, the US actually, when we're looking at a global stage, has actually taken some of the biggest steps backwards when it comes to women's rights and sexual and reproductive rights. But we can just look not too far away at Latin America for how it should be done, where we've seen in Mexico and Argentina and Colombia, there have been great strides made in relation to securing women's rights to safe abortions.
All right, Tarana Hassan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
International headlines now, and the latest on the war in Ukraine as Russian forces are close to capturing a key town.
NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with that and other world news. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, one of the bloodiest battles since the start of the war is still being fought in Soledar. It's a salt mining town in eastern Ukraine and a key target for the Russian military, which in the last days and weeks has launched an unrelenting assault using jets, mortars and rockets to defeat Ukrainian resistance there. Soledar is seen as a strategic target for the Russians because a victory there will pave the way to other areas in the Donetsk province that remain in Ukrainian control. Now let's go to Afghanistan, where the Taliban say that at least 10 people have been killed and 5 others injured in a suicide bomb attack outside the country's foreign ministry in the capital, Kabul. The local branch of the Islamic State, known as ISIS-K, claimed responsibility. On its Telegram channel, ISIS-K wrote that several diplomatic employees were among the dead, a claim that cannot be independently verified. And let's move to the UK, where Royal Mail said that it was temporarily unable to ship letters and parcels overseas due to a cyber incident and has asked people to stop sending mail abroad, at least for now. Royal Mail apologized but did not specify what kind of cyber incident caused the disruption. But it did say that its team was working around the clock to resolve it. So if you are waiting for a letter or a parcel from the UK and it's late, well, now you know why. News you can use, guys.
Yes, that's very helpful. And I'll not send all my packages to the UK that are getting ready to mail out.
Be prepared to wait.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
All right, Claudio, thank you.
Coming up, if you are a professional procrastinator, you might want to start working on that to-do list. Researchers say putting off your tasks could be bad for your health. Dr. Azar is here to tell us more about that.
Also ahead, a look at the latest TikTok trend. It is called brown noise. We'll tell you what it is and how some folks are using it to treat their ADHD symptoms. Next on Morning News Now.
Welcome back. The nursing strike that impacted 2 of New York City's largest hospitals appears to have come to an end. Montefiore, Bronx, and Mount Sinai hospitals released a joint statement this morning saying they've reached a deal with the New York State Nurses Association. The president of the association praised the move as a, quote, historic victory for New York City nurses. Reporter Romney Smith from our affiliate WNBC joined us now from outside the Montefiore Hospital with the latest. Romney, good morning to you. So I guess what's the situation like where you are right now? I'm guessing a little quieter this morning. And what can you tell us about this deal that was reached?
Good morning to you, Joe. I have to let you know that the nurses started reporting back to work at 7 o'clock this morning. So around 6:45, there were lots of cheers and chants and car honking. And, of course, nurses giving each other hugs, welcoming each other back to work because the strike is now officially over. And this happened in the wee hours of the morning. I have to let you know, I start working around 2 a.m. and we got word around 3 a.m. of one deal and about 3:30 of the second deal. And these deals are historic precedents. And they finally agree to what the nurses have been asking for so long. We're not talking about weeks or months. We're talking about years here. So in the new agreement, tentatively at Montefiore in the Bronx, these nurses are getting a 19.1% wage increase over the next 3 years, 170 new nursing jobs, guaranteed more nurses in the ER, also nurse practitioners. They will also increase nurse education infrastructure and more. The reason why nurses say this new contract that they just are working to ratify is so important is because of the patient to staff ratio. One of their complaints was not about the money. They were saying if we don't have enough nurses, we can't properly treat the patients because we have more of a workload to deal with, let's say, 8 to 10 patients when we might only supposed to have 3 to 4 patients. So that was a really big sticking point, is providing the best care possible for patients and not only getting the guarantee that the hospital would hire more people, but that there would be some kind of accountability and enforcement so that if the hospital doesn't meet those numbers that they are supposed to, that the hospital would have to pay out a penalty directly to those nurses who are then being forced to take on a bigger workload. So that is one of the huge sticking points, and they did, in fact, get that, highlighting it in their release, saying it is precedent setting. Now, there are also other things that they got that we haven't mentioned. For example, they used to get IVF help, about $5,000. That is now increased to $24,000. So this is really an all-encompassing thing, talking about fertility benefits, retirement benefits, pay, staffing. And what the nurses have been saying very steady for the past 3 days that I've been here is that they want to make sure that they can do the best job they can and that they need more nurses. And it looks like now that that is on the way, both here and at Mount Sinai. About 7,100 nurses. In fact, it's so important, Governor Kathy Hochul came to welcome nurses back to work this morning.
All right, Romney Smith, thank you so much. Appreciate that report. Now to our weekly medical checkup. Procrastinators beware. Putting off your checklist of stuff you need to get done, that might be doing you more harm than good.
Plus, changing up your diet might be good for you after all. We have more on what foods you should focus on. So let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar for more on all of this. Good morning to you, Dr. Azar. So we have some news for procrastinators. A new study shows that procrastination may lead to mental, physical, and even financial problems later on. So what's the link here?
I know. So, well, this was a study out of Sweden, but I'm going to guess that it's going to apply to Americans as well. This was actually a study done on Swedish university students. So it's a perfect group to test procrastination effects, right? Because we all did that in college. Yeah. So what did they find? Let's take a look at this graphic, if we can, for our viewers. Kids who procrastinated had a higher incidence of depression, anxiety, stress, upper extremity pain, poor sleep, physical inactivity, loneliness, and economic difficulties. And here's the thing. Procrastinating, by definition, is putting something off even though you know it's going to cause you more discomfort or more problems later on, but we still do it. So the doctor's orders are pretty straightforward. Set some ground rules for yourself. Make deadlines, and especially work in groups. I don't know if you guys felt this way, but in college and medical school, working with groups, it makes you accountable, right? And it keeps you on time and on schedule. And I think that those kinds of things can really help people get through.
You don't want to let them down.
Exactly. You hope not, right?
Right.
All right, let's talk about this next study that shows even if you can't stick with one diet, trying a few different healthy eating habits that's key can be helpful. Explain what should we be doing here?
So here's the thing. You know how we always, like every year, there's like, what's the best diet, right? And Mediterranean diet comes up on top all the time. But this study actually followed about 100,000 men and women over a very long period of time. And they found that individuals who did a little bit of here and there from a list of very, very good diets, like we showed our viewers, the Mediterranean diet, the healthful plant-based diet, a healthy eating index, and an alternate healthy eating index. What that actually is that you score what you eat, and the higher your number on that score means you're eating healthy. The take home here is that if you are eating from a number of different diets, but those diets contain vegetables and legumes and nuts and lean meats and, fish oils and things like that, you can save your life. There's actually a 20% decline in mortality if you follow a healthy diet, but it doesn't need to be one. It can be a mixture of many.
All right. Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much. We appreciate you updating us on all those things. All
right, some good news there.
A new study is drawing attention to an alarming problem inside of hospitals. A growing number of inpatients are impacted by adverse medical effects, and for some, the results can often be fatal.
NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has more.
Our lives changed forever at that moment.
Losing her child in 2002 led Lenore Alexander to change her life and to become a patient advocate. Her 11-year-old daughter, Leah, was admitted to a Los Angeles hospital for elective surgery to repair a chest deformity. Following surgery, she says Leah's condition spiraled.
And I kept telling them she was in a lot of pain.
Lenore says she fell asleep next to Leah's hospital bed. When she woke up,
I looked at her. I knew that wasn't Leah, that was a body, and I screamed.
What was the cause of death?
They put cause of death unknown.
But Lenore blames what she says were mistakes made in the hospital. And an autopsy report shows an epidural catheter was found in tissue in Leah's chest wall, not in epidural space. The hospital told NBC News it was unable to discuss the case due to privacy laws. Patient safety is an issue highlighted in a new study examining patient data from 2018 that found nearly 25% of patients hospitalized experience an adverse event. Nearly a third of those events considered serious and more than a fifth of them preventable, many due to error involving things like medication or surgery. And the study's authors worry with the pandemic.
There are reasons to think that it could even be worse because we have so many issues today.
To help keep yourself safe in the hospital, experts say ask questions, know what medication you should be taking, and bring a family member or friend.
It's so easy to teach people basic patient safety, and nobody really thinks they need it until they need it.
Erin McLaughlin, NBC News, Agora Hills, California.
Well, patients with ADHD are struggling to fill their Adderall and Ritalin prescriptions as a nationwide medication shortage continues. Some TikTok users have found a new way to treat their symptoms. It's called brown noise, and it's taking social media by storm. NBC News correspondent Maya Eaglin reports.
There's a new trend making noise on social media.
I just remember, putting it on, and my focus was immediately boosted. It was fascinating.
Nick Hawbreaker has been posting his journey with ADHD to TikTok since 2020. His first viral video, a TikTok on using brown noise, which has been viewed more than 22 million times.
It's insane the way it blew up, and I was able to help so many people.
Nick is one of the many people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder who feel that listening to external audio stimulation can improve focus. And he's not alone. The hashtag brown noise has racked up more than 100 million views on TikTok. You may already be familiar with white noise, a combination of sound which includes every frequency the human ear can hear. It can often sound like static from a TV, but brown noise is a series of lower frequency noises that can sound like wind, heavy rain, or even the hum of a plane.
The way the brain takes advantage of range of noise is that it piggybacks on it to improve its focus, improve attention. Essentially amplifies the target signal by loaning the brown noise to the target signal.
8% of Americans 18 to 44 have been diagnosed with ADHD. But is brown noise actually better for helping with its symptoms, which include inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity? While there are some studies showing a correlation between focus and listening to brown noise, many experts are conflicted.
There's, at least when it comes to ADHD, almost no research on brown noise versus white noise. The special thing about brown noise or white noise is it's cheap and simple. And so if it works, then that's tremendous news for people that need a boost.
Brown noise is clarity on caffeine. It's the clarity and the clearness of understanding what you have to do and being in this perfect place to be able to do it.
Peter Shankman is a podcast host and author who gives tips on living with ADHD.
When did you find out that you had ADHD?
So I was diagnosed late. I wasn't diagnosed in my mid-30s, and everything started to make sense, right? My acting out in school, my making jokes at the expense of interrupting the class, all that stuff was to get extra dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline, the things that your brain doesn't make.
He hopes that sharing his experience will make talking about having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder less taboo.
We don't talk enough about mental health in this country by a long shot, and I'm hoping to change that. I don't consider myself diagnosed. I consider myself gifted with ADHD.
Peter says he even chose to write one of his books on a plane because that naturally occurring brown noise made him focus better.
What I realized over time when I first started discovering brown noise is that the engines freeze something in me, that opens something in me, that lets me work even faster than normal.
Despite the lack of research on brown noise, Nick says he's confident that the reception he's gotten is proof of this trending tool's benefits.
Would you recommend people try using brown noise?
100%. I mean, if you have ADHD, 110%. If you don't have ADHD, I think the benefits could extend to you. The feedback we get online is quite obvious as to how helpful it can be.
Maya Eaglin, NBC News.
Coming up, gas stoves are igniting a heated debate in Washington. We're going to tell you why the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission is backtracking after raising the possibility of a ban on them, what President Biden has to say about it.
And why a new vaccine to save the honeybees is creating a lot of buzz. Next. It is a heated debate that is taking over Washington, whether gas stoves should be banned from homes across the country.
The chair of the Consumer Product Safety Commission is raising concerns over the use of stoves, saying they're a serious health risk. NBC News correspondent Zincle Esamoah has the details.
The safety of in-home gas stoves is sparking a political battle in Washington.
The president does not support banning gas stoves.
On Monday, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission Chair Richard Trumka Jr. saying to Bloomberg, quote, products that can't be made safe can be banned when asked about gas stove safety. The statement sparked swift backlash from Republicans, tweeting, get your hands off our gas stoves. Democrats are coming for your kitchen appliances, and calling the suggestion a weaponization of the federal federal bureaucracy. The commission since clarifying, tweeting CPSC isn't coming for anyone's gas stoves. Regulations apply to new products. The commission declined our request for interview, saying they don't want to, quote, amplify this story that is a non-story.
Gas stoves are used by about 38% of Americans, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Are gas stoves safe?
You know, and that's a question we don't really have a solid answer for. And what they're recommending is further studies to find out.
A recent study by the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health finding 12.7% of current childhood asthma in the U.S. may be linked to gas stove use. 9 states and Washington, D.C., plus 94 local governments currently have policies that move away from fossil fuels and toward all-electric power in buildings, according to environmental protection nonprofit RMI. The American Gas Association releasing a statement saying concerns over natural gas safety are baseless and misguided.
What do you recommend to individuals like myself who have a gas stove?
Well, first and foremost, don't be afraid of your gas stove if it's working properly. Make sure your vent hood is working and is venting properly outside of the kitchen. Now, number 2, if you're cooking, and you can, especially in the summertime, open up some windows to get some ventilation.
The commission on Tuesday adding that any action to regulate appliances would be a, quote, lengthy process, meaning for now, regulation of gas stoves remains on the back burner.
That was Zinkley Esenwa reporting. President Biden's newly passed Inflation Reduction Act does include an $840 rebate to replace equipment like gas stoves.
Now to some financial headlines. A new Mac is in the works at Apple, but it's not quite what you might be expecting.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with the answer to that one and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Kathy, good morning to you. Yes, so Apple is reportedly working on a touchscreen Mac that could debut in 2025 as part of a bigger update to the MacBook Pro. Macs have generated more sales for Apple than iPads over the past several years. The potential move comes after many of Apple's rivals have launched computers with touchscreens, something that the company's late co-founder Steve Jobs was firmly against. The CEO of KB Home says potential home buyers are more cautious now than in the middle of last year due to higher mortgage rates, persistent inflation, and an uncertain economy. The home builder reporting quarterly earnings that missed Wall Street forecasts. The company says conditions in the housing market remain challenging. The CEO is leaving the door open for possible price cuts ahead of the spring selling season. And Microsoft is giving its U.S. employees unlimited time off. The new policy, which starts next week, applies to all salaried but not hourly workers. Microsoft will offer 10 company holidays, leaves of absence, sick and mental health days, and time away for jury duty or bereavement in addition to the unlimited time off. Employees who have unused vacation balance will get a one-time payout in April. LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, Salesforce, Oracle, and Netflix, they also offer similar policies, guys. Sounds pretty amazing.
It does, although isn't there this debate over whether if you give people unlimited time off, they actually take less time off and things like that?
Exactly. That was the first thing that came to mind. I know. It really is a mind game.
Curious how that works out. All right, Silvana, thank you.
You got it.
Well, beekeepers are buzzing over a new vaccine that could help save their beehives.
The Department of Agriculture has approved a vaccine. It targets a deadly bacteria that's destroying the global honeybee population. NBC News correspondent Jake Ward takes a closer look.
Bees. They may bug you during the summer, but we desperately need these creatures. They are crucial to pollinating crops. How crucial? 1 out of every 3 bites of food you eat exists because of pollination. That's fresh produce, nuts, and, yes, your cup of coffee. Think about it this way. Honeybees alone pollinate more than 100 types of fruits and vegetables. But a bacterial disease called American foul brood is now destroying bee colonies at alarming rates. Annette Kleiser, CEO of Dateline Animal Health, says something must be done.
It's found in approximately 50% of beehives, that's the estimate, around the world. So it can lay dormant for many, many decades. And all of a sudden, if there's another stressor, if there's anything else that happens, it's like we know that from us, we can all of a sudden get sick. And that happens also to the bees.
Currently, there is no cure for this disease. Once foul brood is detected, beekeepers have to destroy the hive or use antibiotics, which can have some nasty side effects.
That comes with many, many problems, antibiotic resistance, contamination of honey. It weakens the microbiome of the honeybees. They can get other diseases because their immune system is compromised.
But over the last few years, Annette and her team have developed a promising vaccine that the U.S. Department of Agriculture just conditionally approved.
We take the disease-forming bug, kill it, we inactivate it. We put it in something that is called queen candy. It's a sugar paste that is given to the queen. So if she's vaccinated, she passes that vaccine on to all the eggs that she lays, and the entire colony is then protected.
Currently, Dateline is seeking state-by-state approval for the vaccine, focusing on the large breeding areas like California and states along the Gulf Coast. And this is not just important for commercial beekeepers. This vaccine could be an absolute game changer for, well, all of us.
These animals are really critical. They're really important, and we all rely on them, and we have to take care of them. It's a real existential survival critical issue for everybody around the world.
And our thanks to Jake Ward for that report. The vaccine will only be distributed on a limited basis to commercial beekeepers this year.
Very interesting. All right, coming up, making plans to get away?
You'll want to check this out. The New York Times is out with its top travel destinations this year. So which cities made the cut? That's next. You're watching Morning News Now.
We're back, and apparently so is Snoopy. A toy of the world's most famous beagle has come back to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida after journeying beyond the moon and back. Snoopy was used as a zero-gravity indicator on board NASA's Artemis I Orion spacecraft to show astronauts when they had reached weightlessness. He splashed down on December 11th after traveling more than 1.4 million miles and has now been unpacked, ready for his next mission. Snoopy has actually been associated with NASA since the Apollo era, and a giant version of the Space Explorer, of course, can be seen each November in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There was an unofficial survey NBC did late last year about what's the most popular balloon at the parade, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
It was the Snoopy in the spacesuit.
I love the spacesuit. I kind of want one of those. You know, it's pretty cute.
The Snoopy spacesuit.
Yeah.
Halloween's coming.
All right. Well, we end this hour with a little bit of Wanderlust. The New York Times released its annual list of the best places to travel, from the frigid scenery you can take in on the Alaska Railroad to the Namib Desert in southern Africa. This year's list has a city for every possible adventure you might be looking for.
So here with us and more on the list is New York Times travel desk editor Stephen Hiltner. Stephen, good morning. What a fun job this is to talk about. Talk to us about which cities are at the top of the list and how do you go about putting this one together? I mean, do you visit all 52 places?
I wish. Yeah, thank you for having me. You know, it's a bit of an institution at the New York Times. This is the 10th year that we put together our 52 places to go list. And the city that tops the list this year is perhaps unsurprisingly London, which is obviously a city a lot of people know very well that is going through lots of transition, culminating in May in the coronation of King Charles III. So that's really a place that we've identified as somewhere where you can't just learn about history, but you can also participate and witness history.
That's cool. And anything else in the top three there that's worth pointing out?
I was really intrigued by Monument Valley Navajo Tribal Park. It's sort of, there are several items on the list just this year that we identified as, of course, very beautiful and epic in their own right, but as alternatives to national parks, which were really overrun during the pandemic. A lot of them saw record visitation numbers. And I think that was in part because national parks were some of the few places that Americans felt comfortable traveling when the coronavirus was still buzzing around.
Yeah, and speaking of the pandemic, obviously a lot of people had staycations. I mean, they had to kind of explore their own backyard. So what other U.S. cities made the cut?
That's a great question. Greenville, South Carolina is on there as a new sort of cultural food capital. Palm Springs, California, we identified as a good place for astrotourism. It's one of the places where they have very dark skies that are good for seeing stars and other places. And, you know, Charleston, South Carolina has a new $100 million International African American Museum that's opening this year that will help the city and visitors to the city grapple with the complicated past there of the transatlantic slave trade.
Interesting. So do you have any plans to visit any of the cities that are on the list this year?
That is a great question. I don't have plans, but there are definitely a number of destinations that are very appealing. There's a place on the list in Methana in Greece, which is a volcanic peninsula about 30 miles southwest of Athens. And it's really interesting. It's a place where locals have identified and mapped walking routes, some of which date to the Bronze Age, and have sort of reopened them as places where you can hike and spend some time. And actually sort of thinking about layered history, these are places where you can walk knowing that 5,000 years ago, other people were walking the same paths.
Question you're probably asked a lot is why 52? Is it because of 52 weeks in the year, or is it just kind of a cool number?
That's a great question. We've talked about it on our desk. We're not quite sure about the origins, to be honest. There were 2 years where we did send 2 journalists, Jada Yuan and Sebastian Modik, fantastic journalists, to visit each one of these places. That was in 2018 and 2019, so it aligned well, obviously, with the calendar year. But as for why we continue and why it originated, it's a little bit of a mystery.
You should make a recommendation to do all 52 yourself this year, and then you can report on that, right? Or do you want to join them?
Yeah, why not? Sign me up. All right, well, the wheels are turning. Thanks for that list.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And, of course, that full list is available on the New York Times right now. Stephen, thanks so much.
All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.